The Kremlin says an agreement between Russia and Turkey on a de-escalation zone in Syria's northwestern province of Idlib has not been fully implemented. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Moscow and Ankara are troubled by the situation in Idlib. Russia earlier said the situation in Idlib was rapidly deteriorating and that it was almost under the full control of Nusra Front militants. Moscow and Ankara plan to take steps to stabilize the situation in the Syrian province. The two countries tried to create a de-escalation zone in the region last year to allow the return of thousands of displaced Syrians to their homes. Our correspondent Muhammad Ali is joining us now from the Syrian capital, Damascus, with more on that story. Muhammad, welcome to the program. Please help refresh our memories as to what it is the de-escalation agreement of Idlib was calling for that the Kremlin is saying is not being fully implemented.
Yes, there are three main stages for the Idlib deal, which happened between, of course, Russia and Turkey in September 2018. There are three main stages. The first stage stipulated that there should be a demilitarized zone, which is more of a buffer zone that surrounds Idlib itself, about 20-kilometer buffer zone that surrounds Idlib. In that buffer zone, all of the terrorists should withdraw. And also, the next stage will be also stipulating that all heavy weapons that terrorists obtain over there in that area, meaning tanks and heavy machine guns, should be also surrendered. This would have been the second stage, but it was not actually reached because the al-Nusra Front, which is heading the so-called Hay'et Tahrir al-Sham, a terrorist coalition over there inside Idlib, refused such a deal in general, the Idlib deal, and also refused to hand over its heavy weapons. The third stage and the last stage of the Idlib deal stipulated that the Syrian government should have control over the area and the government institutions should be back working inside Idlib. However, we only saw the first stage, which is creating that demilitarized zone around Idlib, and we saw how the Russian and Turkish forces were patrolling the area. But the second stage itself was never reached, which is having those terrorist groups handing over the heavy weapons. Of course, before this deal, the Syrian government, of course, with its allies, the Syrian army, was heavily advancing across Syria. And after ending the military operations in southern Syria, there was a decision to eliminate terrorism, particularly the al-Nusra Front from Idlib. But then this deal came along in order to perhaps save more civilian lives inside that area and end it peacefully. However, Turkey, which is known to have very close links and influence over various armed groups in that area, was not able so far to convince them to actually implement this deal fully and hand over such heavy weapons and reconcile perhaps with the Syrian government. And this is why the Kremlin is expressing concern over the area inside Idlib and that this deal has not been implemented yet. Of course, the Syrian government has been throughout the unrest saying that Turkey has been supporting armed terrorist groups inside Idlib for a long time, and it is the one responsible, perhaps, according to this deal, to influence those terrorists. If this deal continues to fail, what we will be seeing on the ground, according to many experts, is definitely a military operation, at least against the al-Nusra Front, not the so-called moderate opposition groups inside Idlib. Especially, but we have to take into consideration a very important fact, which is that the al-Nusra Front, heading the Hay'et Tahrir al-Sham, is in control of most of Idlib over there in that area, especially after a month ago, the al-Nusra Front attacked all of the so-called moderate opposition groups inside Idlib and west of Aleppo, taking control of their positions.
Looking ahead, Muhammad, is there a chance that this deal could altogether fall apart?
Well, definitely this is an option on the table because for months now, about 4 months, Turkey has failed on the ground to convince those armed groups to actually implement this deal. So definitely there is a military option on the table, especially that in 2018, at the beginning of 2018 and all until its end, the Russian officials have been vowing to defeat terrorism, and particularly the al-Nusra Front, in that year. This didn't happen because they gave more time to Turkey through this deal, perhaps, to end the situation in Idlib peacefully and without a fight. But since that this is not possible so far, and it seems that those terrorists of the al-Nusra Front and Hay'et Tahrir al-Sham will never perhaps accept surrendering their weapons, it seems that we could be soon seeing such kind of a military operation, if not against all armed groups, at least against Hay'et Tahrir al-Sham, which is against this deal.
All right, thanks a lot, Mohammed. Press TV's Mohammed Ali joining us from the Syrian capital, Damascus.